First of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining our 179th Street Access Management Circulation Plan and Intersection Improvements at 29th Avenue Open House. Before we do get started, I do want to let you go over some key items. This is a recorded meeting, so we will not be recording any cameras or chats, but the presentations and the audio will be recorded. We will post the recorded presentation on our project website here in the next couple of days. Once our presentations have concluded, we will have a question and answer session at the end. As you can tell, everyone is muted, and you'll remain muted for the entire presentation. During our question and answer session, you will be able to raise your virtual hand, and a host will call on you and unmute you in order for you to ask audible questions. Now, we do have a slide here to familiarize yourself with the raise hand option. You can raise your hand by clicking on the participant list, find your name. You might need to hover a little bit, but you should be able to find a hand symbol. You can click on the hand and then it'll raise your virtual hand. The other option is to find your reaction button located on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You might need to scroll down a little bit to find it. After you find that reaction button, there will also be a raised hand icon that will appear just above those reactions. So we will only call on those who have their virtual hand raised. So just keep that in mind when we get to that question and answer session. If there are if anyone's on the phone right now, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your phone, and that will enable the virtual hand. Another item is that we do have a chat feature that is enabled. So if you do think of a question during the presentation, you are able to go ahead and type in your question and send it through. We will either answer it on the chat or we will read it aloud later on during our question and answer session. We do have several Clark County Public Works employees as well as our consultants. So you can type in a question and we'll reply to you there. Also, in order to be considerate of everyone's time, we will adhere to our time frame. So therefore, this first part of the presentation, including our question and answer session, will end promptly at 5:55. We'll have a 5-minute break. You're able to stay for the second part of the presentation if you'd like to. That meeting will start at 6. Email addresses will be provided at the end of the presentation and will also be available on our project website. Those in attendance will also be receiving an email from me with Title VI forms and a comment form. If you'd like to fill that out, those forms are voluntary. Alrighty, so that was a mouthful, but Matt Herman with our planning division with Clark County Public Works will start off our presentation today. And Matt, I will let you go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Herman. I'm a long-range transportation planner with the Public Works Department. This slide here shows other Clark County employees, including Cindy, who you've met, Kaylee McLaughlin-Burton, who's our communications manager, Scott Sawyer, who will be presenting later. Joining him will be Isaac McConnell. Laura Sly is also on the call, as well as some of our consultants, including Doug Sarkinen, Randy Johnson, and David Haynes. Next slide, please. So to begin, I want to clearly distinguish the planning effort, the 179th Street Access Management and Circulation Plan, from the improvement at 29th and later at 6 o'clock for 50th Avenue. This transportation planning effort is a long-range transportation planning effort. It is not a construction effort. The plan focuses on a local transportation system where local roads will be built as development occurs. As you know, 179th Street has several hills and valleys that currently exist. So our effort is to identify where those local roads fit in, and we build an efficient and safe corridor and a predictable local road network that satisfies growth management goals of an efficient multimodal transportation network. Next slide. So, as you know, the purpose is really a safety and mobility purpose. It's a purpose for the corridor as the neighborhood does develop and does have more residents, more traffic. It's to provide a facility that is safe and is mobile and is not congested. We do have several considerations to occur when planning that, and that's in the topography. Significant hills and valleys exist east of the interchange from 15th Avenue to 50th Avenue, and therefore it's important to locate key intersections at locations that are visible, that provide turning movements that are safe, and we can meet the needs of building a community and a developing neighborhood that serves its residents. Next slide. This map here shows the study area. You're looking at the corridor 179th Street from Northwest 11th Avenue to Northeast 50th Avenue. Currently, 179th Street exists today in most cases as a two-lane rural road. However, it is classified as a principal arterial road, which means it's slated to have 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. The neighborhood, Fairgrounds Neighborhood Association, is in the Vancouver urban growth area. So there are several large lots that do currently exist. They have but they are designated with urban zoning designations that do allow these properties to redevelop, which increases the growth of the neighborhood. And as that growth occurs, it's critical to guide development to build a well-connected street system. Here you're seeing maps and future roads on our arterial atlas. Our arterial atlas is our future long-range circulation plan. Several of the roads are just lines on a map right now, waiting for future development to build those roads. Next slide. So the neighborhood was added to the Vancouver urban growth area in 2007 during the comprehensive plan update. At that time, urban holding overlays were placed on the land that restricted urban level development and subdivisions. And this is called urban holding. In 2009, the Mill Creek sub-area plan was adopted in 2009. And this Mill Creek sub-area plan is approximately south of 179th and west of 50th Avenue. In 2015, the Washington State Legislature directed funding to reconstruct the I-5 179th Street interchange. And then in 2020, urban holding overlays were removed. This allowed urban development and subdivisions of that land to occur. And as you've seen, there are significant subdivisions that are currently being built today. Next slide. So with this urban level development, we have to consider the existing intersections and evaluate their ability to handle the additional traffic that come with new development. As you can see, there are several intersections from Northwest 11th Avenue to Northeast 50th Avenue, and they consist the wide gamut between stop controlled, signalized, and all-way stop control. Slide. We can also see that there are many existing residents that access 179th directly from their driveways. Without planning for the locations of intersections and converting these driveways to public roads that serve the new development, it would create an unsafe and congested corridor. It would not serve the residents. It would not be community, an important corridor for the community, and not a desirable road to travel. This is showing existing driveways on the west of 179th Street, of 179th interchange, excuse me. Next slide. And here are the existing driveways from 179th interchange to 29th Avenue. Next slide. And here are driveways from 29th Avenue to 50th Avenue. So as you can see, several of these large properties that you live on, directly access 179th Street. We want to make sure that we build a local circulation network that not only serves the existing residents, but serves the future residents as well. Next slide. Additionally, east of the interchange, there are several hills and valleys. So here you're looking at a cross section of 179th Street from 15th Avenue to 22nd Avenue. That dashed green line represents the current grade, with the red line showing what is needed to bring the road to its principal arterial standard. In order to develop that road, there's several hills that need to be cut and several valleys that need to be elevated in order for that principal arterial to be built. The horizontal lines are in increments of 5 feet. Next slide. Here you're seeing the grade differential from 25th Avenue to 37th Avenue. Excuse me. This is the location where we have the most significant hills and valleys, just to the east of 29th Avenue intersection. And again, you're seeing the significant elevation change that's necessary to build this principal arterial of 179th Street. Next slide. Again, this is the topology section from the BPA right away to 50th Avenue. There are several significant environmental constraints in the neighborhood. Here you're seeing streams marked in blue, as well as wetlands in green. It's important to plan for a local road network that has less impact on these critical areas. So here you're seeing the critical areas from 11th Avenue to the interchange. Next slide. And the critical areas from the interchange to 29th Avenue. Again, the streams in blue and the wetlands are shown as green. Next slide. And again, the environmental constraints or critical areas from 29th Avenue to 50th Avenue are shown on this map. Here's a map that shows both a map and a chart of collisions on the corridor from 2015 to 2019. We know from this data that the intersection locations are where the greatest amount and most severe collisions occur. And they are shown by larger circles, larger purple circles. So it's very paramount. Safety is our primary focus. To acknowledge that intersection control is critical for developing a safe and mobile road network. This slide is showing the Clark County capital projects. So these purple roads and intersections are projects that will be built by Clark County in the future. The Clark County is responsible for building arterials and collectors. For local roads, meaning local residential roads or neighborhood circulators and sometimes collectors, those are built by development. Built by development as development occurs. So if a subdivision is applied for through our community development department, it goes through a review process, and the review process conditions the development to build the roads in order to serve that development. We do not build the local roads. The development builds the local roads. Next slide. So this slide starts to show the proposed plan. Plan is implemented by amending the arterial atlas, our long-range transportation circulation plan. This map is showing the proposed roads to be added to the arterial atlas as a yellow highlight. These roads shown on this map, highlighted in yellow, are neighborhood circulator roads. They're a 54-foot right-of-way, and they will be built as new development occurs. If a property is on this and is crossed by a proposed road, and that property does not develop, does not choose to develop, wants to remain a large property, those roads do not get built. And that is the case for the collector road that's running from the fairgrounds entrance to the north. That is a proposed road that has been on the arterial atlas plan since 2009 and is not built because those that land has not redeveloped and has not subdivided. You're also seeing, oh, sorry, go back. You're also seeing the intersection types noted at the intersections. The red circles are shown as future roundabouts, with the blue squares shown as right in, right out access. So, for example, if a driver is going westbound on 179th Street, they would take a right into the neighborhood circulator road, and they would take a right out of the circulator road using the roundabout to make a left turn and double back to the interchange. Next slide. Here you're seeing the proposed plan from the interchange to 29th Avenue. We're planning on removing the roads from the arterial atlas that will be disconnected from 179th Street near the interchange. This includes 10th Avenue and Union Road. We will realign the future extension of 15th Avenue to what it has been refined in its design to, with roundabout locations at approximately 12th Avenue and 15th Avenue. Those roundabout locations at 12th Avenue is important to serve a large commercial development on the south side of 179th Street. You're also seeing on this map orange and black triangles. Those orange and black triangles are noted as interim access with future access to be converted for emergency vehicles only. So that means that it will remain a access location until a local road serves it. So once a local road serves it off of 179th Street, it will be converted to emergency access only. But in the meantime, again, if those properties do not redevelop, it will remain as access for the current resident that lives there. We're also planning to realign future neighborhood circulator north of 179th Street to avoid the impacting the wetland and move it onto the property line to avoid impact to that wetland. We're proposing to add a roundabout at approximately 22nd Avenue. That's in the middle of your screen, in the middle of the map. The location there is on top of a hill, which makes it the ideal location for sight distance purposes for those making full turn movements. Next slide. Here you're seeing our proposed plan from 29th Avenue to 50th Avenue. Again, you're seeing roundabout locations at 29th Avenue, approximately 37th Avenue, 45th Avenue, and 50th Avenue. Again, you're seeing the blue right in, right out intersection locations and the emergency access locations. We would like to connect 179th Street eventually to the future neighborhood circulator to the north, just east of 29th Avenue, and then have a future collector at 37th Avenue connect to 174th Street.
Join my phone again.
Additionally, we would like to add neighborhood circulators, which serve as with direct driveway access between 174th Street and 179th Street. Next slide. We also want to accommodate the planning for both pedestrians to connect to 179th Street. We know that arterials such as 179th Street connect people to services, both in terms of shopping as well as everyday services. So we want to make sure that there's pedestrian connectivity onto 179th Street. Here you're seeing light blue lines that connect developing neighborhoods to 179th Street, as well as the very light pink trail system that connects the neighborhood to Maple Creek.
Oh, just one moment. There, it seems like someone's somehow unmuting. All right, go ahead.
Okay, next slide. Here you're seeing, again, the pedestrian access ways that we would like to plan between the interchange and 15th Avenue to connect to the commercial zoning districts, as well as the introduction of wildlife refuge areas. We recognize that it's not only vehicles that need to cross 179th Street, but it's also wildlife as well. So in locations where there's a major stream, we would like to enhance that crossing to have grade separated crossing for wildlife as well. So it would serve more as a refuge area that would be alongside the stream that wildlife can go across the 179th Street. Next slide. And those are also shown here in the dark green dashed lines. They're in locations where streams exist, and we want to enhance those crossings to accommodate those refuge areas for wildlife to move freely without 179th Street obstructing. Next slide. So currently we are in the public outreach notice section of our adoption process. The proposal is set to go in front of the Planning Commission at a public hearing on February 17th. That's a Thursday evening. That is open to the public. The public is encouraged to make comments, to ask the planning commissioners questions, ask staff questions, and be heard during their recommendation. Following the planning commission recommendation, it's scheduled to go in front of county council on March 15th. That's a Tuesday evening, I believe. And then the county council will consider the planning commission's recommendation and either approve, modify, or reject the proposal. So with that said, I will shift the presentation to Scott Sawyer, who will be talking about the specific intersection improvement at 29th Avenue.
Thank you, Matt. I sure do appreciate it. And I want to wish everyone a good evening. As Matt indicated, I am Scott Sawyer with Clark County. I'm in the Capital Project Management section, and I am the Capital Project Manager for the 179th and Northeast 29th Avenue project, as well as the Northeast 179th Street and Northeast 50th Avenue project that we'll be talking more about tonight at 6 o'clock. During that portion of the open house, if you'd like to stick around for that. What I'm showing you right now on the screen is the reason why I'm doing that is I want to take a step back. Many of you may have received an invite to the open house last fall, and then you noticed that we kind of hit the brakes. The reason why we did that is once all of this began, the urban holding was released, we as staff wanted to jump forward and get going on these projects because we knew that it was important to get this construction going and get some of these improvements in place because we knew that development was going to be occurring as well. We had some new leadership and the decision was made that we need to kind of stop. We need to take a bigger holistic view of the corridor and make sure that we're thinking this through as far as the planning side of things, as Matt just explained with you about the access management plan, the development of that, as well as looking at what's going to be occurring as we get closer to the interchange. So what I'm showing you here are a number of different projects that are proposed, and you will likely see in the next 6 to 8 to 10 years. It's going to be a little bit of a long haul, but I'm hoping that once we're all done, it's going to be a better situation. But starting from the left side, you see the red bar there. That's to represent the realignment of Delfell Road. Currently, if you're familiar with that, the north leg of Delfell and the south leg of Delfell are offset a bit, and the north leg of Delfell is very close to the off-ramp of the I-5 interchange. As we see an increase in traffic flow, that's going to become a much bigger issue, as I'm sure you've realized as you've driven in that area. So our intent for that project is to realign that north leg of Delfell onto the west side of the Chevron to connect up with the south leg that's currently connected to 179. The interchange is being completed by the Washington State Department of Transportation, and they will be doing a total reconstruction of the interchange and changing out the bridges and also changing out the on and off ramps and where they connect into 179th. That's another large reason why we're having to realign Delfell to get it out of the way, as well as while you're seeing a closure of Northeast 10th Avenue. If you come off I-5 now northbound, you know that you can go directly straight forward onto Northeast 10th Avenue, and the on-ramp is offset to the west, which again, as you increase traffic flow, is going to be a challenging situation. Excuse me. So as Matt had indicated, one of our projects will be extending Northeast 15th Avenue to connect into 10th Avenue there. So rather than going straight as you get off the freeway, you will need to go east to get to Northeast 15th Avenue, and then you can turn northward and then get yourself back to Northeast 10th Avenue. What you're seeing there in purple is that section between where the improvements will be done with the interchange and then the improvements that will be completed with the Northeast 15th Avenue project. As I mentioned, the intent of the 15th Avenue project is to extend 15th up to Northeast 10th. And then also on the east side of it, we will be focusing on the section of Northeast 179th between that 15th Avenue over to where the improvements are being completed for Northeast 179th and 29th Avenue, which are in blue there. So And then if you look to the far right over there, we're Northeast 179th and 50th Avenue, you'll see that there's going to be a small project there. I'll talk more about that one at 6 o'clock. But this kind of gives you an idea as we've stepped back. What we want to also look at is the construction sequencing and the timing, because you know, some of these are going to need to have detours, and we want to make sure that the detours will not prevent anyone from being able to get to their homes at any time. It's very important to look at the funding and making sure that we can line up the funding to be able to complete these projects in a sequence stage. Next slide, please. For Northeast 179th Street and Northeast 29th Avenue, I've kind of circled where that intersection currently is at this location. As you can see, it's about a mile east of the interchange. Currently, it's well, let's go to the next slide, please. And what this project will entail is changing that four-way, all-way stop-controlled intersection, and we're going to be incorporating a multi-lane, single-lane striped roundabout. And what I mean by that is that the extent of traffic that we have right now only warrants a single-lane roundabout. However, what we don't want to do is come back in and widen that in a future date to make it a multi-lane roundabout. We'd rather do it all at one time, get the Band-Aid off and get what we need to get and just stripe it as a single lane for now. As Matt had talked about, this is one of a number of different projects that are going to be needed to prevent concurrency failure and accommodate that additional traffic volumes that are anticipated with the future residential and commercial growth that's in the area. One of the other things we're doing is while we have the ground tore up, we want to make sure that we give Clark Regional Wastewater District and Clark Public Utilities the opportunity to put in whatever pipe work they need to. That doesn't necessarily mean that there would be sewer at this time, but we want to make sure that the pipes are in the ground so that as they move forward with their systems, that they have the dry pipes in the ground and they can just connect to them rather than coming back in and digging up what we just put in place. And the other thing that's important as we're doing these improvements is also focusing on stormwater and making sure that we're retaining and treating the stormwater as it's coming off the street, where right now it's going off into ditches and into the streams. Next slide, please. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to either Doug Sarkinen or Randy Johnson. I can't remember which one is going to take that. And we may need to unmute them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there we go. Hi, good evening. So we're going to talk, this consultant team, we're going to talk about these 7 items. And Randy Johnson, DPS.
I'm sorry, Doug, could you introduce yourself, please? Yes, could you introduce yourself for the group, please?
Oh, yeah. So Doug Sarkinen with OTAC. I am the consultant project manager for the project. And we'll have with us David Haynes with OTAC will talk at the last, and then Randy Johnson from DKS will talk about some of the traffic issues here. So we're going to talk about these 7 items pretty briefly. We'll have Randy talk about, Scott mentioned it, the decision to go to roundabout versus signalized intersection, what was behind that. He's also going to show what Scott also mentioned, this how we're going to build first a single lane, then a double lane, maybe 20 years in the future. He'll show that. He's got a neat visualization where they've developed to show how those 2 roundabouts work. Then I'll talk about, just briefly to mention property impacts. We're not going to get in detail, but there are people have been asking about that, and we are meeting with some of the property owners, but I'll just mention that briefly. We'll talk about, there's 2 stream crossings there. We'll talk about, we did analysis to see what's the best way to go about those. I'll hit on environmental impacts because there are some in what we're doing. And then David will summarize with some aesthetics that we're looking at for the quarter. So next slide, and Randy can jump in.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Doug. So I'm Randy Johnson, Senior Traffic Engineer with DKS Associates. And looking at 29th Avenue here along 179th, we considered both a traffic signal as well as a roundabout. And we have a detailed process we go through that's called the Intersection Control Evaluation, or ICE process. And that looks at all elements of capacity and safety, as well as life cycle cost, which include maintenance, puts a monetary value on delay incurred for the users, both freight and the everyday public that drives through that intersection. But safety is the real driver here. And so with roundabouts, they generally have about 3 times as less fatal and injury crashes as compared to a traffic signal. And the reasoning behind that is really having to do with the speed. So the roundabout, with the geometry of the roundabout, it forces vehicles to slow down to about 20 to 25 miles an hour. And so if there's a pedestrian collision, that's going to be far more survivable than, say, traffic signal where there's a collision, maybe the driver runs a red light. That collision could be as high as 40 or more miles per hour. So that's where a lot of that safety comes in. In addition, if there's a vehicle collision, a red light running at a signal is generally a right angle, high speed collision. Whereas at a roundabout, it's generally a side swipe, low speed. And so it ends up being more of a property damage only type collision. So the safety is very important. And then the capacity in terms of how much delay and time you might spend waiting to get through the intersection, the roundabout provides far more capacity for the given right of way. And you can see we kind of grade these between kind of like your school report card between an A and an F. The roundabout with the future forecast volumes, with all the development that Matt had mentioned in place, we're able to operate at a level service A versus a C with the signal. And part of that signal has to do with how long it takes to cycle through, and just given a larger intersection, there's going to be movements that have to wait. And then when we look at the life cycle cost, as I mentioned, that includes monetary value on the safety aspects, vehicle delay, construction costs, and maintenance. And so the roundabout, especially on the maintenance side, is going to be much lower in the long run without all of the infrastructure and technology and the signal systems that comes with a traffic signal. So this whole process, we documented everything in what we call that intersection control evaluation report. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. So also, as Scott had mentioned, we're going to construct this initially as a single lane, but the ultimate footprint will accommodate the multi-lane roundabout. So we don't have to do any additional widening to go from a single lane to a multi-lane in the future. The question of when do we go from a single lane to a multi-lane, ultimately that will be dependent on the development that occurs in the area. So we have a multi-lane design that basically will accommodate the full build out of the area. But if that ends up taking more than 20 years, maybe we don't necessarily need to go to the multi-lane roundabout. So currently we're showing that single lane will take us right up to about that 20-year mark before we need to start considering converting approaches to the roundabout to multi-lane. Next slide, please. So we have the interim design here on the left and the ultimate design here on the right. So you can see, I don't know if my pointer is showing up for everybody here, but on the left image on the year of opening design, you can see it's all single lane, and we'll get into a little bit more detail with the video here in a minute. But where you see that the dark orange on the, we call them splitter islands approaching the roundabout, and then you have your central island, and there's always a bit of a truck apron where a large truck, the trailer, can off track onto the central island. But we'll widen into those spaces to accommodate any future lanes that we might need to widen. And it could be that, again, it's going to be development driven, that maybe only the 179th approaches need to be widened and not the 29th. You could also see that the future plan of 29th to the south only has single approach lanes, but we do widen out to, we can accommodate dual through lanes or turn lanes as needed. So it's a really flexible design, and it's a really cost-effective way to expand into the future because it's just widening into that central island space. Next slide, please. So we're going to show 2 videos here. Go ahead and click on the first one. So these videos are created using a software called vSim. It's a, you click on the word interim video, is that popping up?
Video is showing on my screen. Is that not what you're seeing?
What if you exit out of presentation mode and then drag the window over?
Okay. All right, how's that?
Perfect. All right. So again, this is what we call a traffic microsimulation. And so this actually represents the future forecast or the year of opening forecast volumes. We put in all the geometry, it simulates driver behavior. And so this is a realistic representation of the behavior and the conditions. So you can see kind of what this looks like from the driver perspective here, a little bit of above angle. Cyclists and pedestrians are accommodated by multi-use paths that approach and kind of surround the roundabout there. Pedestrians crossing the roundabout, rather than multiple lanes at a signal with all these turn lanes, you're crossing one lane at a time and have a refuge in the middle with those splitter islands. You could also see access to local driveways with cut-throughs through those islands. And then capacity-wise, generally roundabouts keep traffic moving a little bit more because it's just a yield condition rather than a full stop condition. And this will fully accommodate trucks. So Matt talked about the total access management plan for 179th. So whether you get a large interstate semi-trailer truck, we call those WB67s. If one of those gets in there and needs to do a U-turn, this will fully accommodate that. It's designed to accommodate other unique vehicle needs, whether it's a low boy trailer or any special agricultural equipment that we'll even take into consideration where the signs are placed. Comment there of how would a tractor going 15 mile an hour fare? Sometimes they're going slower than that. So here's an example. So here's one of the big trucks coming in. So this might cruise through there at, depending on the driver, about 15 or less miles per hour. And you can see how that trailer kind of off tracks into the middle. So for time's sake, let's go ahead and jump to the next video. So the next video is the ultimate, and so you'll see the full multi-lane approach, and you'll notice the volumes are quite a bit higher. And this is just showing the footprint of the roundabout itself. It's not showing the rest of the 179th improvements. See here as this flies through, you'll see how the roadway's been widened into those splitter islands where the multi-use paths are for the cyclists and pedestrians. Those have remained unchanged. No additional property impacts to do that additional widening. You get a little bit more queuing. Pedestrians now have to cross 2 lanes, but again, it's 2 lanes of slow moving traffic and you have the pedestrian refuge in the middle. Again, this is preliminary design. As we get into final design, exactly how wide the lane widths are might change. So looking at time here, we should probably jump on to the next section.
Oh, thanks, Randy. That was great. I'll talk just briefly, Dave, and I'll wrap this up to give some time for questions. But I just mentioned there are numerous property impacts. There's a widening, both permanent right away, as this red line shows, temporary as the green line shows that we have to build it. We need space to build it as well. We were meeting with the property owners, most of them, as we get access one-on-one and talking about issues, working about the driveway configurations and walls and slopes, and there's a number of issues to deal with. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I think if you're affected by one of those and you haven't heard from us, go ahead and contact Scott. And we're just getting this documentation going, so the process is starting. So next slide. So we're going to talk about this. This is an overview of the roundabout over the existing aerial. It shows, you can see this tributary to Mill Creek comes at an angle through the project. There's 2 creek crossings. They they're pretty deep ravines, frankly. So we did for both of them, we did this alternative analysis to determine what type of bridge, culvert, what makes sense to cross them. Because of the grade differences that Matt was talking about earlier, would raise the one at 179th about 10 feet and the one at 29th about 15 feet. So it even makes ravines even deeper. So some pretty substantial fills. So I'm going to just show just 2 options. Next slide. We looked at, for example, on 29th is putting a long culvert in there, and there's a lot of fill, a lot of retaining walls. We looked at the cost of that, and there's of course environmental impact with that, and whether the fish like long, those criteria is also fish passage, these long tunnels. Next option, next slide. I mean, this was a bridge option, a 90-foot bridge, because of the deep fills there. And it turns out we looked at 5 different options for each site, and it turned with the selected alternative due to cost, due to construction timing, due to environmental impact, because the wetlands, the stream, and the retaining wall heights. There's a number of factors that went into it. We're going to use a 60-foot long bridge at the crossing at 179th and a 90-foot at 29th. So there's more detail we can talk about if someone's interested. So next slide. So the impacts and mitigation. So we'll just look at those 4 bullet points. Even though it's a small stream, it has been documented there are fish. It's a fish-bearing stream, which triggers some regulations that we deal with. We're basically rebuilding the stream, and those bridges help. Those bridges are going to allow more stream to be opened up and allow wildlife to pass through there. So it was a huge benefit, and it was less impact. The culvert was broken, it's a fish barrier. The habitat north is low quality, it's going to be improved slightly, right? And then the east is better. There are wetlands present both near the stream, and there's some upland in that field that will be impacting, and that will cause mitigation. So I'll talk briefly about that in the next slide. So this is not, I'm not going to go through these numbers at all, just to document that the mitigation in terms of there's wetland buffer, there's riparian areas, riparian buffer, and there's stream impacts, and all these have regulatory compliance issues, and we do have to, because we are impacting some of those, we're making it better by making those bridges, but we are affecting others. So that to mitigate for that, there's a requirement we have to mitigate on site with plantings, stream restoration, up and down and above the roadways, each ways, and then also on a non-off-site mitigation bank, we are going to do some planting to compensate. And there's ratios like 1 to 4, whatever they are, for this different impacts. So that is the plan for mitigation. The environmental permits are going in soon. We can talk. We won't spend much time on those, but the documentation is just about complete here. So it's looking good. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave. Dave, you heard earlier that something happened to your connection? Well, he can join in. I'll talk here. So
does that work?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and so continuity is the key, visual continuity, and so we're going to try to minimize the number of different materials that we're going to use. What you see here is just a list of some of the elements that we will take into consideration as we're going through the design of the corridor. Next slide. Really, one of the main things that we're going to do is incorporate these multi-use paths on either side of the roadway, which will do 2 things. It'll help with the continuity of the look of the corridor, but more importantly, it's going to provide a very safe means of alternative modes of transportation, you know, bicycles and you know, strollers, people walking, running. So the multi-use paths on either side of the road, they're going to be wide, generous sidewalks, and keep all the non-vehicle traffic off the roads. So that's really key. And then, you know, one of the last, go ahead to the next slide. The last component of the aesthetics is the center of the roundabouts. And you know, we're gonna have fun with that. We're going to go through a design process to determine what is most appropriate for this area of the county, and you know, just go through some design charrettes and you know, maybe even get a public artist on board. We don't know yet. It's, you know, just at the beginning stages of the process for designing these. But there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential options, and it should be a lot of fun. That's all.
So I'm gonna go ahead, and I got a few more slides to get through, and we'll hurry through because I know there's some questions that probably want to be asked. The reason why I'm sharing this slide with you is that as we've talked about the proceeding forward with the roundabout and the bridges, and we're going to be, as we talked about, you know, putting a bridge on 179th over the stream crossing there, as well as 29th Avenue, a stream crossing there, that will require us to close this intersection during construction. And so, whoops, I'm sorry, my darn phone. And so I wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. This, what I'm showing here is just conceptual, where we're going to have the closure locations. You know, obviously, we've got to work with the contractor, but I want to make sure that particularly the homeowners that are in this vicinity are aware that we're going to be working to make sure that you have access to your property at all time. That's important to us. And so just because you're seeing a hard closure here doesn't mean that we're not going to find a way to make sure that you're getting home. Next slide. The other thing I wanted to share with you is our proposed detour route. As we close Northeast 179th and 29th, there is not a lot of opportunities for detours, unfortunately. So what we're proposing is that if you are if your need to get to the east side of 29th Avenue, the detour route will be up Northeast 10th Avenue, over to the east on 199th Street. And then if you live on 29th, then you can come down 29th that way, or you head over to Northeast 50th Avenue and come on down that way. And then you can head to the west or to the east as you see fit. Next slide, please. The construction funding, or the funding for this project, we've got a federal grant. We also have traffic impact fees that were paid from the developers. We have county road funds. We have got Clark Public Utilities. They're going to be contributing for the pipes that we put in the ground, as well as Clark Regional Wastewater District for the sewer pipes that we're going to be putting into the ground for them, for their future systems. Next slide, please. Our current project schedule, we anticipate proceeding forward with the property acquisition process beginning in April. We anticipate going through March of 2023. Environmental permitting, as Doug mentioned, is we're getting close to submitting. We've been working with various organizations. We started in April of 2021, and we hope to wrap that up by March of 2023. Bid opening at this point is the spring of 2024. Again, all these are dependent upon how soon we get our permits and then the property acquisition and making sure that all gets taken care of. And anticipated start of construction is the summer of 2024 with substantial completion in the summer of 2026. We do anticipate that this will take 2 seasons between building the bridges and incorporating the roundabout and then all the plantings and all of the aesthetics and everything that goes into that type of thing. So next slide, please. So what I'm showing you here, and I hope we stay on this for just a little bit, is my name and contact information, both my phone number, work phone number, and my email address. You're welcome to email me or call me. And we've also set up an email address strictly for the 179th Street project in general. This will not be the only open house and only opportunity to see these projects. As I mentioned, there are a number of projects that are going to be proceeding forward. Each one of those will likely have their own open house, as well as we'll probably have another open house for this as we get closer. Possibly, I'm going to be working with Cindy and Kaylee on those things. You can also keep track of things on our website. We've created a website at https://clerk.wa.gov /Public Works Northeast 179th Street, Northeast 29th Avenue. What I'm going to try to do is, working with Cindy and Kaylee, try to keep information on that so that you can just pop in at any time and see how things are progressing, how the schedule's progressing. You'll also be able to watch this video again if you'd like. And then we also have our Public Works customer service email at publicworks.cservice@clerk.wa.gov. So with that, I think we went a minute over maybe, but we tried to get her in as quick as we can. Cindy, do we have any questions, or how are we doing time-wise? I know we talked for quite a while.
Yes, that went a little longer than we expected. We do need to take a quick break. There are some questions on the chat, so if you or any of the consultants that are available are able to answer those on the chat, go ahead and do so. But what we will go ahead and do is we won't have any questions and answers for this section. We just ran out of time. But we'll start Matt's presentation again at 6, and then we'll go through the 50th Avenue presentation after that. We should have more time for question and answers at that time. So I know that it'll be another presentation. So if you don't want to sit through the whole thing again, you are more than welcome to log back on here in the next 20 minutes or so. But we're going to take a quick break and then start back up at 6. Thank you.